Hi guys, welcome back. Today we are going to talk about learning curve analysis. To understand what learning curve analysis is all about, imagine that you are doing something new for the first time. You wouldn't expect that you'll do it the best possible way. An error here or there is expected, and you act really slowly. But when you do it the second time, it is highly likely that you'll do it better and faster. Do it again and again, you'll progressively be better and faster. It will come to a point that you are at your most efficient mode in doing it. This is what the learning curve is trying to capture. It tries to capture the impact of learning on the amount of time and resources needed to complete a particular task. Learning curves would be very much useful in determining the time needed and the cost needed for a new project, doing a new process, or maybe operating a new company, as long as learning is involved in the production. Now, learning curve is a mathematical expression of the phenomenon that in doing something new, when production doubles, cumulative average time reduces by a certain rate. It will be reduced to what we call the learning curve rate. To demonstrate, let us refer to the following case. But first, take note that we are using the version of the learning curve called the cumulative average model. Case 1. LOL Tech produces a new product, the T150. As production progresses, manufacturing time reduces with a learning curve of 80%. How long would it take on average to finish each of the first 2 units as a percentage of the time spent on the first unit? Next question, how long would it take on average to finish each of the first 4 units as a percentage of the time spent on the first unit? So what we're going to do first is to understand the question. The question calls for the average time spent on the first 2 units as a percentage on the time spent on the first unit, as a percentage of the time spent on the first unit. Then the second question is similar, but rather than the first 2, we're going to look for the average of the first 4. We are not looking for the additional time needed in order to produce the second unit, the third, and the fourth units. What is asked is basically just the average of the first 2 units and then the first 4 units. In answering the learning curve problems, I would suggest that you follow the following pro forma template. We have the following. First column, the units or the batches. How many units are we going to produce? Then the second and third column will be about the cumulative average time. It talks about what is the total time divided by the number of units produced as a percentage of the first unit or batch. And the next column would be in terms of hours or sometimes in terms of pesos, depending on what is being asked. Then for the last column, the fourth column, we have the total time in hours or maybe expressed in costs. So let us analyze it this way. When the first unit is produced, it will naturally consume 100% of the time it's spent on itself because it is itself. Now, if we are going to double production, according to the learning curve, cumulative average time will be reduced to a certain percentage of the first unit of the time needed to finish the first unit. When we are going to double from 1 unit or batch to 2, the cumulative average time would be reduced to 80%. Just copy the learning curve rate. Again, the learning curve rate is 80% for this case. As a result, if we would want to know what would happen in the first doubling, that would be from one batch to two batches or one unit to two units, it will turn from 100% of the time needed to only 80% of that time. Now, what does this mean? To demonstrate what this means, I would like you to assume, what if the first unit took 10 hours to complete? The first unit took 10 hours to complete. So what would basically happen is, in producing the first unit, it took 10 hours. Okay? Naturally, the total time will also be 10 hours, considering there's only one unit. If the production would double from 1 unit to 2 units, the cumulative average time of the first 2 units will only be 80% of that time spent on the first unit. 80% of 10, that would be 8. The cumulative average time as a percentage of the time spent on the first unit, speaking about the first 2 units, will be 80% and therefore 8. Now, if we're going to talk about the total time needed in order to complete the first 2 units, what we need to do is to just double 8, considering there are 2 units. 2 times 8, that would be 16. So in answering the question, the correct answer is 8. What is 8? Is it the time needed to produce the second unit? No, it isn't. It is the estimated average time of both the first and second unit. Their total time would be 16. On average, it would be 8. Should we want to know the time needed to complete only the second unit, what we can do is to look for the added total time from first unit to the second unit. From 10, in producing the first unit, it becomes 16. We would say that the second unit would consume 6 hours. So, I have just demonstrated what it means to say it's the cumulative average time. We would double further to answer the second question. From 2, we will double to 4. What would happen is, the cumulative average time it takes to produce 4 units would be 80% of the previous doubling. So if the previous doubling is 80% of the first unit, 80% of 80%, that would be 64%. Should you be interested in knowing the cumulative average time in order to produce the 4 units, again, average of the 4, that would naturally be 6.4. Should you want to know the total time needed to produce the 4 units combined? That would be a total of 4 times 6.4, 25.6. So there you go. That is what we mean when we talk about the cumulative average model in learning curve analysis. Let us now proceed to the second case. CHR Corporation aims to limit its labor costs to a maximum amount of 3,600 for the first 4 batches of its new product, DWG. Charlie expects an 80% learning curve. What maximum labor costs could the first batch take to meet the limit? This highlights the importance of learning curve in budgeting for costs, especially labor and labor-related costs. Should we need to account for costs in the earlier time of the company, earlier stage of the company, or if there's a new process, a new product, the learning curve would be very material. So in this case, the first 4 batches should require a maximum of 3,600 pesos only in labor costs. So 3,600 divided by 4, that would be 900 pesos per unit. Should we be discouraged if the first unit has exceeded 900 pesos? Not necessarily. Why? Even if it would exceed 900 pesos, it can still be improved. Again, This is the application of learning curve. Go back to our table. First column, the units or batches. Then the cumulative average time as a percentage of the first unit. Then the cost. Then finally, the total time in terms of cost. First unit will naturally be 100% of itself. The cost needed to produce the first unit would naturally be 100% of the time spent on itself. Double the first unit, double one unit to 2, you would have 80%. A cumulative average time of only 80% of that spent on the first unit. Next, we are going to double further from 2 to 4. 80% of 80%, it will now be 64% of the average time spent on the first unit. Now, according to CHR Corporation's budget, the maximum amount of labor cost acceptable is 3,600. So the total labor cost should not be higher than 3,600. Should we want to know the average for the 4, 3,600 divided by 4, that's 900 pesos. Again, it doesn't mean, however, that we would be discouraged if the first unit has consumed more than 900 pesos. Why? There is room for learning, a room for improvement. So it doesn't matter when the 900 pesos is not met or was exceeded in producing the first unit. What's the maximum amount that we can spend on the first unit? What we need to do is to just divide 900 pesos by 64%. And there you go. The cumulative average time spent on the first unit should not be higher than 1,406.25. That would also be the total time because it is only one unit. Now, let us refer to the last case, case 3. MAC recently completed and sold an order of 5 units of an item that had the following costs. Direct materials, 15 pesos. Direct labor, consumed 10 hours, 85 pesos. Variable overhead, based on direct labor hours, 40 pesos. Fixed overhead, which is simply allocated 10% of the variable costs incurred, 14 pesos. So that would give us a total of 154 pesos for the first order. MAC has been requested to prepare a bid for 15 units of the same item. If an 80% learning curve applies, how much total cost would MAC account on this order? Now, we have to understand that materials do not learn. Who learns? Only laborers. Only people can learn. Only direct labor and those that are based on direct labor would be affected by the learning curve, logically speaking. Let us get back to our template with the following columns. Consider the first order of 5 units as one batch. So we have here batch 1 consisting of 5 units. Cumulative average time as a percentage of itself would be 100%. And again, it took 10 hours, 10 direct labor hours to complete this order. Again, the total time in hours is 10. Next we have, let's double 5. This becomes 10, 2 batches. For the first 2 batches, the cumulative average time spent would be reduced to only 80% of the original. 80% of 10 would be 8. Then there you go. 2 batches, 8 hours on average. That would be a total of 16 hours. Double further, from 2 to 4 batches, we now have 20 units. That would be 80% of 80%. The cumulative average time will now be 64% of the original 10. And there you go. So we would have a cumulative average time of 6.4 per batch. We will have a total time of 25.6 for the first 4 batches. At this point, remember that the next order will only be for 15 units. The first unit has already been ordered and it has already been sold. The first 5 units can now be removed. So if we will remove the first 5 units and consider only the second, the third, and the fourth 5 units, that would be a total of 15. The total time needed for the next 15 units will therefore be 25.6 minus 10. The difference is 15.6 hours. Again, batch 1 took 10 hours. Batch 2, 3, and 4, that's a total of 15 units. 5 times 3, 15.6 hours only. So, when it comes to estimating the cost of the next order, we have to understand that this should be accounted for. The impact of learning on the required time. Direct materials is 15. 15 times 3, because this is 3 times the first order, that would give us 45 pesos. Remember that materials, again, do not learn. As for the direct labor, it used to be 85 for 10 hours. That would give us 850 per hour. So 850 times 15.6 hours, 132.6 pesos. Variable overhead is also based on the direct labor hours. That would give us 40 divided by 10 hours, that's 4 per hour. 4 times 15.60, 62.40. We would sum up the first 3 costs, all of these variable costs. We would end up with 240 pesos. 10% off 240 pesos is 24. The fixed overhead allocation will only be equivalent to 10% of the variable costs incurred. That would give us a total cost of 264 pesos. So in preparing the quote for the next order, the next 15 units, we are going to estimate a cost of 264 pesos. So there you go. This is what the learning curve is all about. The learning curve is all about accounting for the impact of increasing efficiency as a result of experiencing the work. This applies normally to laborers when they become better and better in doing it. And as always, thank you for watching. Thank you for watching. Comment for the future topics that you would like to request. Don't forget to hit the thumbs up button if you like this video, and hit the subscribe and notification bell to be updated for future videos.